Hey everyone, Hammad here. Welcome to my channel, Cloud with Hammad, DIY Cloud Learning to Inspire. For today in our cloud series, which is part 3 of my video series, I will be deploying Windows Virtual Desktop, WVD, using on-premises Active Directory. In order for you to deploy active Windows Virtual Desktop, you do need Active Directory, either on-premises or an Azure cloud service or a managed path service, which is called ADDS, Active Directory Domain Services, to authenticate users and deploy Windows Virtual Desktop. Now, in order for you to learn how to deploy an Active Directory domain services, you can click on my video here, and or you can sync the users from on-premises to cloud by clicking on the AD Connect integration video. Also, this is my third video, and then on my fourth video, I will actually deploy Active Directory domain services and deploy Windows Virtual Desktop and authenticate using that manner. For now, let's go to our notes. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe, like, and share. Without further ado, let's go to my notes now. Alright guys, so in my notes we will definitely talk about Windows Virtual Desktop, but let me recap as to what we're going to be doing today. So in our diagram, we did create an on-premises Active Directory domain services, which is this video here. You can click on this to see how you can set up the Active Directory on premises. And then what I did was, in my next video, I did AD Connect, which is to synchronize users from on-premises Active Directory to cloud Active Directory, which is Azure Active Directory. So once I did that, now what we're going to do is we're going to deploy Azure Windows Virtual Desktop. So this actually does need either or on-premises Active Directory or a domain services, which is a managed domain from Azure Active Directory domain services. So for this video, we'll just authenticate these users who are logging into Windows Virtual Desktop to Active Directory domain services, actually Active Directory on premises. And then in my final fourth video, we'll just deploy this Active Directory domain services, and we'll just authenticate users through these this domain services rather than using on-premises. All right, so also I will show you, I will actually leave the link on where you can find documentation as well, but we'll quickly discuss what is virtual desktop, and then host pool, what is host pool, application group, what is workspace, virtual desktop, like what is personal versus pooled Windows Virtual Desktop. So once we go through deployment, we'll quickly come back here and discuss what they are. Also, recommended VM images are these are the VM images recommended by Microsoft. It's in the documentation as well, what is load balancing, how it works. And then actually what we'll do is I'm actually I'm following this document. I'll leave the link as well. It's a tutorial on how to create host pool, what do you do, like breadth first, what type of personal. So once we get here, what we'll do is we'll go back to our documentation and review quickly as to what it means. Alright guys, before we get into deployment, I do want to discuss Azure Virtual Desktop architecture. Basically, what I would say is Azure, let's quickly discuss, even though I will discuss in there as well. I copied some definition, but let's quickly discuss this slide as well. Azure Virtual Desktop is a desktop application virtualization service that runs on Azure. So you have a browser, you have a Mac, iPad, iPhone, any device, and that you can use that device to connect to a VM which is in Azure. That's what it is. So common use case, like a banking institution or healthcare or government, that they don't want a public IP for anyone to connect and hack to their system. So what they did was these financial institution or even government, they deployed virtual desktop, which is inside the network, which is secured behind firewall or any sort of network which is secure. You can deploy a virtual desktop, and you can give customers a web link or even like a subscribe to a link, and they can just connect through there to a VM that is like network access. You will have a hard drive, you will have network drive, so all those things. So the elastic workforce that says remote worker, contractor, and partners access. So anyone working remote or any contractor or any other third-party vendor that you want them to connect to your network to do testing, that you can give them Windows Virtual Desktop access and they can connect. And then you can also have employees. You can basically give them access to a desktop, and they can work through if they don't have a laptop or at that point. And then specialized workload, it's basically done for engineering. So I know, like currently, we work with a lot of data engineers where they want to test out data lakes and everything. So we spend, and they have a lot of SQL Server reports. So we give them basically like VM that they can test out. If they want to delete it, they can just ask for us to delete it without having to give us a more like a dedicated machine. And then architecture, pretty simple. On premises, this is one VNet, this is another VNet. Subscription, there is one subscription, there is another subscription, and these subscriptions are paired to each other. There is a file net app. So quickly to discuss, there is this Azure AD Connect, which we deployed in the last video, where this AD Connects basically synchronize Active Directory to Azure Active Directory, and this is directly this on-premises is connected to VNet hub virtual network through express route. So there's gateways, and then DMZ, you don't need to worry about that. But there is also Active Directory's domain services, which we'll discuss later. So the architecture is that customers, wherever they are, these are like web access gateway broker. This is Azure managed. So we'll talk about it in the next slide. But what happens is customer use web to connect to Active Directory, to connect to a link. That link actually authenticate through Active Directory, and that connects to the users at on-premises, and the authentication happens. So we'll discuss it through our slides as well, and then when we are doing deployment. This is Azure managed, as I mentioned, web access, user access virtual desktop through an HTML compatible browser. There's a gateway, connects remote users to Azure Virtual Desktop app and desktop from the internet access. Like I mentioned, there is an app that is given. I'll show you as well. And then you can access through a browser as well. And then there's a connection broker, manages user connection to Virtual Desktop and app. A diagnostic, basically event-based, that marks each user administration access. So if you get disconnected, that event-based aggregator will connect you back to the same session. And then extensive component manages Azure Virtual Desktop using Windows PowerShell or REST API. That over here, this is managed by Azure, this is Active Directory, and these are managed by customer. So Virtual Desktop component, which is managed by customer, is session host, users, application images, and then you can have your own image to deploy in Virtual Desktop. VNet, of course, I mentioned that the customer means that you are the customer who will manage the virtual network, whether via on-premises or VPN to Azure Express Route, AD, obviously. And then domain services, Azure Virtual Desktop session, a host pool can run the operating system. So the host pool is actually where most of the magic happens. So personal and pool desktop, host pools are a collection of one or more identical virtual machine, VM, with Azure Virtual Desktop environment. So this is a host pool where there's a lot of VM. There are different departments that connect to these host pools. You can allot them, so if you have a finance department, this host pool is finance host pool. So they will connect directly to this one only. So you can define it just like a group happens in AD. We'll discuss a little bit further once we go in. You can have service update for AVD. We don't have to worry about these things right now, but you can update the windows, and then you can monitor the network. Limitation, quickly discussed, cannot create more than 200 application groups per single Azure AD tenant. We'll talk about application group in a bit. Don't publish more than 50 application per application group. don't deploy more than 5,000 VM per Azure subscription, and then limit around 1,200 VM per Azure subscription per region. API throttling limit doesn't allow more than 600 Azure VM, and then can deploy 399 VMs per Azure Virtual Desktop ARM template. Let's quickly sizing. I won't worry about it. But if you're in production, you do want to know, like, you want to give sizing. I have deployed a burstable sizing in a lot of environment at work, so I would recommend making sure that you have a burstable B size for the start, and then from there you basically go from there. Infrastructure, I think these are all the details, but let's actually go to our deployment quickly and go from there and see how it works. So without further ado, let's go to our deployment here. Alright guys, so I'm already logged into the portal. I had to recreate the Active Directory domain controller only because the subscription that I had it in did expire, the AP07. So because of that, I had to basically renew a new subscription, and at that point I had to just go ahead and create another the Active Directory domain controller. So in any case, what we'll do is we'll actually use this subscription today, and first thing, we want to make sure that our resource group for Active Directory domain and the VM is running. So at this point, let me turn on the VM while we start creating the resource group. So this is stop, so we're going to start the VM, and then also we will start creating a resource group in which we're going to create our virtual desktops. So again, let's create, we'll pick up this subscription, WVD RG US East. You can do that, and then create a resource group. Next thing, we will create a VNet. This is on-prem VNet, which is where the EAD is. We will join that as well to make sure that it is talking to each other. So I'll show you in a second here. So resource group network. So I would say WVD VNet. IP address. You can have any, like, you can take any, I mean 1024 as well, or whatever works for you. Subnet, you can just pick up that subnet. Actually, let's keep it 16. Why not? Next. Create the subnet and the VNet. Once that is done, next thing what we'll do is we'll pair them. So by saying that, let's make sure I have two of them joined. So pairing between the two resource group is important for it to talk to each other, and then we want to make sure that the domain DNS is also like it's in there. So this is the VNet that we created for that resource group, which is WVD. And I would go in here, and I will first go ahead and click on this pairing here, and I will start a pairing between the two network so that they know where the domain is. So I would say copy this name to, so WVD VNet 2 is going to on-prem AED, and it will connect to the other way around. So it's on-prem AD to VNet. And then you can actually use the subscription and join through here. You can just subscription and then select this one, or you can actually just do, I know my resource group, resource manager. So VNet needs to be connected to VNet. So what I would do is, just for the sake of it to learn, let's go to here, and then this is the network interface, or you can just go to properties here. where is it? Properties, and then you copy this resource ID. And so this is another way to pair. I mean, and then you can just paste here and add, and everything is allow. So it's gonna update here. In the meantime, I also need to check whether we have the on-prem AD is working. So I click here, on-prem AD VM. So this is running. So this is running. So I'm gonna copy this, and I will open my favorite tool, actually I should say, and I will log into this VM just to make sure that everything is there. And I will recap this as well so that everybody understands what's going on here. So while it's loading, I'm just going to minimize this for a second. And then also the VNet needs to know, this is the on-prem VNet. This also has a DNS. So we will have to define the DNS address over here to our on-prem. This is on-prem VNet. So we need to go to RG. And we want to make sure once we get here, over here, we need to define the DNS server. This is where we're going to add the DNS from the domain controller, that is this one. So first, I want to make sure that we all understand our domain controller, that is independently. Domain controller has an IP of 192.168.0.4. 192.168.0.4. And I will add that so that the Windows desktop, when it deploys the machine, it knows where the DNS is for it to join the domain. So that's what it is. Also, I want to make sure I go back here and I give a little bit of background here. So this is the AD domain services, DNS, and the other stuff going on here. But also, I want to make sure that I get this understand. So click on tools and go to users and computers for users. You need to make sure that the users that you are creating of whatever it gets synced to. So these users are the few users that I created these are the default users, the Fremont, San Jose. This is local admin. So I also added these as a part of administration group. You don't have to do it. Just make sure whatever the domain administrator for this AD is also in the Active Directory, Azure Active Directory. So once I created this, you can check out the video. I did AD sync services. So if I go synchronize service, and when I did that, it already have sync all the users from this AD to Azure AD, which is, let's say, Fremont, California, or test admin, or San Jose. When I synced it, it should have gone to Azure AD up here as a user through AD Connect. So there's a video here. You can check this video out as well. So if I click here, and you can see administrator is here, admin at. So we'll use this one as an admin at Hammad ML, which is up at our domain controller. So if you look up here, admin. Okay. Anyway, so we're gonna minimize this. We're gonna go back to our AD, and then we start deploying. So for you to get to Windows Virtual Desktop, either you can type in Windows Virtual Desktop, Azure Virtual Desktop, and then it comes up with host pool. These are the stuff that we will talk. Host pool, application group, work group, and user. Let's deploy first, and then we can talk a little bit while it's just deploying. So same subscription 8. you will pick up a resource group, RG. You can give them WVD host pool, HP, and then East US. Host pool type, there are two type of host pool, personal and pooled. So I will talk to you about that in a second here. Actually, let's do that right now. So if I go here, what is host pool? Host pool are a collection of one or more identical virtual machines within Azure Virtual Desktop tenant environment. Create a resource group, which we did with VM in Azure subscription, which we have created a resource group, and join the VM to Active Directory domain controller, which is what we're going to do, and register the VM with Azure Virtual Desktop. So that's host pool. And then we also over there we selected what is the pooled and personal pool. With Windows Virtual Desktop, you now also have the capability that Microsoft calls pooled desktops or personal desktop. Pooled desktop is when you have multiple users on the same virtual machine. Pool desktop is when user can connect one-to-one machines. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll actually, in this lab, what we'll do is I'll show you both. So one is like personal desktop, which is dedicated. We'll assign a machine to a user, and then pool one is we'll just assign users, but we won't assign the machine to those users. When we log in, that machine will automatically connect to it. And then there is another subdivision of pooled deployment, which is breadth first and depth first. We can talk about it too. Breadth first load balancing allows you to evenly distribute user session across session host, and then depth first is load balancer, allow you to saturate. First it get to if you have 10, it will get to that 10, and then it will go to the next 10. So that's how I would say. Also, I think I mentioned it that these are the recommended images for deploying Windows Virtual Desktop. It's in the document as well. Also, I think workspace is a logical grouping of application group in Azure Virtual Desktop. Each Azure Virtual Desktop application group must be associated with the workspace. So what happens is if I don't associate this with workspace, it's going to show that, hey, you know what, administration. What I'll do is I'll not associate this to log in first, and the error message will show you saying that your administrator needs to do some work on it. So at that point I'll show you. So I know it's getting late on the deployment, but I wanted to cover a couple of stuff. So let's first deploy a personal host pool. Click next, and then add a virtual machine. Yes, you can add a virtual machine. Name of the virtual machine is WVD VM. So it will come up at WVD VM -01, 02, 02, 03. Availability zone, we don't need that right now. Images, we can have your own in storage blob. So you create your own. You can create it just like image capture. You will create your own image. Get some stuff installed, softwares, and then take an image snapshot and put it in Azure storage, and that link can be defined here if you want to do it storage blob. For now, we'll just pick up the gallery here. Select the gallery, whatever you like. Let's do 1909, which is the recommended version. Beat size, I would say right now we're just doing D2, but the burstable size, the B series, is I think the recommended one that I've been using at work as well myself. So I think I would use that one for now. And then number of VMs for dedicated personal, I would just say, so in the previous screen we said personal. So for dedicated personal, I would just use one. But if you have 10 people, you just need to put 10 for dedicated people. You need to assign 10 machines for those dedicated 10 people. So just remember that. This is a lab, so we'll just keep it at 1. But let's say if you have 10 users, you need to make sure that this is 10 when it's talking about personal space, personal deployment. So that's it. And then make sure standard depends on what your requirement is. For now, we'll just do standard. Boot diagnostic, we won't manage storage. We don't need it, but let's leave it like that. Virtual network, we already have defined WVNet, and then the default subnet, basic security group. And over here, we don't want public inbound port, so we'll just leave it no, because we will go through the web browser or even the desktop application. I'll show you the application as well. So, and then join Active Directory domain. This is the Active Directory domain, which is, I think we talked about admin at Hammad Siddiqui.ml, password, and then password. This is actually the one in our AD. This is the one that we talked about, and when we did AD sync, it went to this one. So it's here. So you need to have there's an ID, and which is an administrative ID, needs to be an AD on premises, and it's synced to Active Directory so that when it deploys, it authenticates through the domain. Okay, so minimize this. This is a local admin, so let's say if something happens and you want to check, you will use this as a machine local admin. And then if you have ARM template, you can use that. Workspace, I mentioned you what workspace is. A workspace is logical grouping of application groups in Azure Virtual Desktop. Each Azure Virtual Desktop application group must be associated with the workspace. So we need to associate this in a second here. So if we don't have anyone, we'll just create one WVD workspace. Just give what name works for you. Next. In advance, we don't have to enable boot diagnostic. You can give tags, review, and the validation pass, and hit create. So the initial deployment takes good 20-25 minutes. So I will let it deploy. It's going to give you details. So again, let me explain it a little bit further back to my board here, just to make sure I have some time. So once again, you can set up multiple session Windows 9 deployment that delivers full Windows desktop with scalability. And then you can also have 365 app, Office, Power BI, and this and that. It also provides 7 and then remote desktop and virtualize both desktop and application. A host pool, you need host pool for collection of one or more identical virtual machines. Application group is an object that contains application that you want to treat similarly in policy. What this does is, like, there is a place where you can just define if you don't have Office 365. So this offering is where you can select a Word document to be published onto your work group. If we have a time, we will check that out as well. Again, you need to have a host pool. With Windows Virtual Desktop, you now also have the capability that Microsoft calls pool desktop or personal desktop. Pool desktop is when you have multiple users on the same virtual machine. So one machine, 10 people, 20 people can log in. It depends on if the virtual machine has the right size and it can hold the capacity. Personal desktop is like you have assigned. Right now we are doing personal desktop where we have assigned one VM to one person. So 10 people, 10 VM. In pool, we just have one VM with big processor, and that can log in at the same time. And then pooled also get further defined into breadth first and depth first. So breadth first load balancing allow you to evenly distribute user session across session host in the host pool. And depth first is that you have 10 people, they will log in first, and then the next 20 people will go to the next one. So guys, so deployment did happened. I want to check how much time it took. So detail. So it took 7 minutes to deploy that one machine as a dedicated. Anyway, so I just wanted to see. So now you are here on the host pool, which is where you manage all the details. You can see there was one machine that assigned. Right now it's unavailable because it's not assigned. So in order for me to so let's say if I want to connect to this VM. So another thing that I wanted to pull up here. So let's bring this and then just to make sure that you understand what I'm saying. So web link for Windows Virtual Desktop. So if I click here, and there's a document as well that tells you, hey, you can use client or connect Azure Desktop with web client. So these are the stuff if you are US government, you can use this portal. We are going to be using this. So we copy this and then we will log in here. So what's I'm trying to make you understand is that in order for you to have a dedicated machine, which is a personal machine, you need to assign that machine to a user for that user to work. I will want to show you the workflow first, but let me make this understand first. So let's say if I do I have a user in Active Directory, which is a Fremont user, and his email address is Fremont, right? So if I say Fremont at matsiddiqui.ml and I try to log in and password, actually, so if I log in, I don't want it for now. Click no. So it's gonna go into Microsoft and then it would look for that workspace. So it looks like your system administrator hasn't set up your resource for Fremont yet. Please choose a different account or try again. So the reason this message is coming because I haven't assigned the user to this host pool. So for that, I would minimize this. I would go back here. So you can see the application group. Let's say if I want to, this is an application host group. So if I click on it, and then, you know, there's assignment. I haven't. So if I go here, host pool, and there's an application group. And if I go here, there's application that I can assign the application. So I can add so let's say you have to have set up initially before you can do that. There is no MX packages. But let's say if I want to assign a user and I say, I cannot find the name. So let's say if I want to Fremont, so there's no name. So it says to assign a virtual user to a virtual machine, assign VM. So if I click on VM, this is a VM and there is this session host. So if I click on session host, if I hit assign and I would search for name, Fremont, I won't get it. The reason behind that is that it needs to be, like I mentioned it up here, the workspace, each Azure Virtual Desktop application must be associated with a workspace. So the whole desktop application group needs to be a part of workspace. So you won't see it till we get here to a workspace. Go to resource group. You can search workspace here as well, workspace. And you can get here, or you can just click on this on your resource group. And then over here, click on to application group, desktop application group, go to assignment. And over here, you need to add that assignment. So you can see all your lists. I would encourage you to create a group on your Azure, not Azure, the on-premise AD, and that synchronize that group so that you can add your group right here, and you know you can manage those users like that. For now, we'll just do Fremont, and we use this one, and we would hit select, and then it's part of that group. Now we go back to our host pool. And then in that host pool, we go to session host. This is virtual machine. And then we will assign it. At first, when I showed you, we weren't seeing the user. Now we have the user. We added that and click select. And then click OK. So as soon as you hit OK, the status will be available. So if I refresh it, now you can see it's available. So it means that the machine is ready. So if, let's say, if we want to go back to our resource group, and let's say if you want to log out, All right, so now after logging in, waiting for a minute or so, it showed up with the desktop icon that we published. So all simple, just double click here, allow, and it's gonna let me log into. So if you remember, we did not open the port, so this is login through browser, same thing, log in, and it configures, and now you can see we are logging into a Windows Virtual Desktop machine that is assigned directly to us. Okay, so this is happening. While that is happening, let's go back here and go back to my host pool, and then I get here, go back here. That was dedicated. Now what we'll do is we'll actually have another one, which will be in this one we won't assign any user, it will be pooled to users. So but we still have to give username, so we have to have assignment, but we don't have to assign that VM. There won't be any option, so I'll show you in a second here. So click here, resource group, I would say WVD host pool 02, just for the sake of the name, and this, instead of personal, we'll do pool. And then in breadth first is that, you know, you have assigned certain numbers and depth first is like 10 people, and then go to next pool and to the third pool. Breadth first, selecting this maximum number of people. I mean, for now it's just, I would say 5 if I want to, it will, but I would just say 1 for now. Next. So let me explain this again. I think I'm not able to explain. So maximum session limit, you can do 5. So after 5, it needs to create another host pool. But let's say if I want to do depth first, after 5, it will get to another, like there is a limit. Like if all the 10 people are logged in, it will ask for another host pool. So I would do breadth first. Number, the name. So this is actually the extension. So let's go back quickly. Let me show you. So if I go here and go to here to the resource group, and you see that it is WVD VM0 0 2 3 4, and you can log into this machine and do administration. So that's how the naming conventions work for Windows Virtual Desktop. So I would say WVD VM HS, that is Hammad Siddiqui, and then now it's going to be 01 02 03, and then same thing, depends where you want this to be. Image, you can pick any image. Multi-session, like I said, I know for sure that 1909 and 2004 generation works well with team. Otherwise you have to do media redirect and everything. I'll get to a troubleshooting. I can explain a little bit on the troubleshooting part as well. Just give me a minute here. So let's set up this, and then number of VM, we say 1 VM. So if you have 5 users, they can log into this 1 VM. Make sure the machine is like a burstable size or anything that can hold those people. Boot diagnostic, we don't need that right now, but anyways. And then VNet is the same, DNet, and then no to, and over here we can use admin. ML, and then you want to make sure local admin, and then next workspace. Let's do another workspace, why not? Let's do one more workspace. Yeah, let's do one more. So this is one for the pooled one, so let's do workspace for pooled users, and then click next, and then next, and then basic, and then validation pass, and you create. So this is going to take another 7 minutes. While that does happen, we're going to go back to our deployment of the first one. So you can see, now you can see this is like a regular Windows machine, This is dedicatedly assigned to me. You can just work whatever. If you even want to like connect to a local network drive, like with the group policy, you can just like have your like Explorer and it would show up all the network drive. So let's say Explorer, and it has like whatever like group policy set up for your network drive is going to show up on here. Also, we would have done FS Logic as well, but a lot of companies nowadays just using OneDrive and will use SharePoint to connect to that work drive. So setting up your OneDrive and then put everything in your OneDrive, and that would be your your home drive. That's how a lot of companies are moving towards. Anyway, so this is how you did your personal workspace. Now, I think what we're going to do is we will wait for this deployment to take place. Once that happens, as indicated, this is pooled one. So same process. Only thing is we need to make sure we assign the user to this workspace. And then also at that point, that user doesn't need to be logged into that VM. So the deployment is still happening. If I click here, so far it's almost 6 minutes. In the meantime, what I'll show you one more thing here. I go here and I would say this PC, I think. So, and I go at and then do a property, and then you can see it is joined to the domain. So this is where we had to make sure that the DNS address of the Windows DNS for that VNet is pointing to the AD prem, so that it knows where the DNS is. So if I give here, I pointed out this IP address, which is the DNS server address. So anyway, so this is how we would join the domain for a machine. This is still happening so far, so we will wait for it to complete the deployment. All right, so deployment is completed. We will click on deployment detail. Well, we can have a template download, but we could click on to the detail here. So it took about 12 minutes to deploy this machine. So if we go to download resources, so you can see there's one virtual machine. It's already available and we don't have to assign the user here. So, but what we need to do is we need to make sure that if I click onto host pool, so if I go back here and click onto session host, it's already, there's no user needed. But if I go to host pool, so go back to host pool, and this is the second one we created. First one, if you remember, we had to go and assign users here, this guy. But for this one, we don't have to assign anything. It is pooled, so it's automatically assigned. Only thing that we would do is we would have to, so what happens if I log into, so let's say, let's do this. Why don't we just do this first? Let's check it out to myself. So if I do this and I say, actually, let's do this. So I also mentioned you about desktop tools. So this is a remote desktop tool that you can download from Windows as well. So if I do Windows Virtual Desktop tool, and then you can download from there. Well, this is the desktop, but click here and the client is there. So this is if you remember, you can download this one. So this is the one that we were talking about, the broker in our architect. So anyways, you can download this one, and that's what I was talking about. This is I opened this one, so you need to subscribe to one. So click on subscribe. So you can send in a link for people to log in there as well. And then over here, I will use, let's say, I think we had San Jose. We can click. There's another one. On premises, San Jose. So SJC. So we'll use that one. So SJC at Hammad Siddiqui.ml. and then password, sign, skip, and it's going to find the resource. Initially it takes time to find the resource, but it says there is currently no resource. Only reason behind that is we haven't actually subscribed this to. We haven't really subscribed this to our what you call workspace. So go back here and then go back to our resource group. Again, go to resource group. So this is the second one for the pooled user, and then application group. And we already have a WVD HP2. This is what we created. And then assignment. We don't have a user, but we do have to add the user. So let's say if we want to do SJC, and then we want to do Fremont. And so these are the two users. I can do also admin. And so these are the three users that can be logging in concurrently into that VM. So I did that. Remember when I added the users, the other ports, and we actually did not. So for this host pool, we did not had. We did assign the user. So if I go a session host, we assign this guy. But for this one, that is the two host pool, we really don't have to assign the user. It is pool, so it can automatically active session. So I'll show you in a second here. So go back here. We would refresh. So might have to log out and log back in. So let's do this. Well, why don't we just go ahead and unsubscribe, subscribe. You say SJC at .ml. Sign in, skip. Okay, so I think we just need to give it a time for it to populate back. I'll unsubscribe for now. We'll try one more time. There you go. So now you can see that host pool has this machine. So if I do the same thing. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we will actually use another web client. So copy this, would go back, copy this into a private window. I would close, well, I don't know, it's going to take, sometimes I think private window works out better. I won't do this here. I would just take a private window and just say Fremont at, actually Fremont is already connected, so let's not confuse. I say admin at hammad.siddiqui.ml. Those are the three users that I set up. Like your admin hasn't set up any resources. Oh, so I think what I did was I haven't add. So I remember that number of VM we have to set up. I think that at that point we had to assign a couple of more. So that's why this error message is happening. So what I'm trying to say is that I should have up the machine size to 2 people at the same time. I just did 1 at that point. So I think that's where this happened. So let's see if I can make some changes. Otherwise, just go ahead and change it to, so let's see if I can go to host pool here. And then I might have to add, oh yeah. So I think we just have to add some more. So let's say, like if I want to do, let me show you what happened here. Go back here. Add, and we have to go through the whole process again of the deployment next. And then at this point, so you go through whatever images over here. Well, it's the same thing. I think the next window actually. Number of VMs, I did 1. If you do 5, then you know that users can log in and those will be individual into that machine. So I would do that way. I actually did not thought about it that way. Anyway, so in any case, you are good to go. I would highly encourage you to go ahead and check out. One more thing that I would say to troubleshoot. So let me explain it. So sometimes the audio video it doesn't work the way it's supposed to be because you need to configure them accordingly. So it says remote audio, but the best way to troubleshoot this is to get here to any of the host pool and click here. And then do you see this RDP property? This is important. So before you deploy a machine, before it gets to a deployment, click onto RDP property, make sure your connection behavior, and then device redirection. Make sure that microphone is this, if you want a microphone, you enable it. Redirection, you want to make sure video coding is enabled. And then quality of the video, I would put in medium. Output in local computer or remote computer, I would put it in remote computer so that it plays on your local machine. And then, rest of them are pretty much same. Go through whatever requirements are, but you do need to set this up so that it works out better for you. Click OK, click Save, and then anyways, that's about it. So once again, going back to our whiteboard, today what we did was we created a virtual desktop and we joined it to domain, and that domain, and we created host pool. One is personal, one is pooled, and deployed 2 different type of machines. One is in the pool section, and then all you need to do is just make sure you shut down your VM, power off, disconnect or restart. I hope you liked the video. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Don't forget to share with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe and like the channel. And until next time, have a great day.